All right, we are live.
We
We
are
are
live.
live and
All
direct.
righty. All right. So, welcome to BKC live stream conversation, where our intention is to empower men of color to embody authentic masculinity. And in case you're joining us for the first time, the intention of this movement is to provide a space where Black men can come and have in, engaging conversations and dialogue about a wide range of topics. So we meet on Sundays with our live stream. We also have a Saturday meeting and a Wednesday meeting. And so I am joined by Paul Newell, who is kind of muted right now, but he's in the background. And my other partner in crime is Jermaine Johnson, who's sitting here live, ready to go. So, Jermaine, first of all, I want you to take real quickly and just tell them in about our Wednesday night call. Just tell them what that's about.
Yeah, thank you, bro. So Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Another one of the groups, bro. Positive, powerful men of color coming together and talking about all of the issues that impact us personally, family, community, and eventually the world. So yeah, join us, man. The link is in our newsletter, and we'll add the link over in the comments as well for you to join if you want to join.
Sweet. Paul, you ready? Paul, are you ready to check in? Can you give us a little insight about the Saturday call?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, Saturday calls. It's an open circle where we have men of color, different from all across the country and honestly even the world, come in, and then we have different topics where men have the opportunity to discuss and flesh out these topics based on their background, their upbringing, their belief system, and there's an opportunity for them to either express and really talk about things that they rarely get to talk about in their society or in their environment, and have an opportunity to rewire, hear other men's thoughts and perspectives, and grow from there. So the BKC Saturday call is really a space for growth and understanding, and a place for men to be seen and heard. And it's become really a family atmosphere, man. Like men in that group really care about each other, man. They're and it's powerful because we've all really seen over the past year and change how these men have grown individually and how they've grown as a collective. So that's what that Saturday is about. It's welcome to all. It's very inviting. It's a warm space. It's and a lot of good positive men join that space. So highly encourage other people to join.
Yeah. And if you're watching online, you'll see the scrolling on the bottom, the brotherhoodofkings.com website. So if you log on to that website, it'll give you access to pretty much everything we're talking about. So make sure, if you haven't done so already, go to the website, sign up for our Saturday calls and our Wednesday calls. And what you have is an opportunity to engage with a group of brothers who are committed to your transformation. And we all know about all the negative media narratives about Black men. But what we're doing, we're changing that narrative. We're changing that narrative to empower Black men to recognize that they have the capacity to be, to do, to have anything they set their minds to. So if you've been looking for a powerful, positive resource for men of color, you have found it. That's what we're all about. And so again, today is the BKC conversation, live conversation, actually, where you have an opportunity to post questions, make comments. I want you to fully engage in this dialogue. And tonight we're going to be talking about possibly one of the most important topics humanity, men, we should all be contemplating. And it begins with a simple question. How did the universe begin? Was it just a random act that just happened? As scientists may say, was it just a big bang and all of a sudden something came from nothing and it just happened? Or was there a creator? Was there something that set all of this in motion? And so the intention tonight is just to have a conversation about this important topic. And it is not our intention to try to prove anybody wrong, or we're just going to express our points of view about this topic. This is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. As a matter of fact, I even wrote a book about it because it means that much to me. So I just want to set a little context about religion. Because again, we're talking about a creator. And if you're talking about a creator, then there's going to be a conversation about religion. And I want you to just see if you knew these things. For example, there are approximately 4,300 different religions in the world. 4,300. Okay? And the top 5 religions around the globe are number 1, which is Christianity, which has approximately 2.3 billion followers. Okay. Number 2 is Islam, which has approximately 1.8 billion followers. Number 3 is Hinduism, which has 1.1 billion followers, followed by Buddhism, which has 500 million followers, and Judaism, which has 10 million followers. So those are the top 5 religions of the world. And as mentioned, there are over 4,300 different religions around the world. And these are just the top 5. Okay. So I want you to kind of think about that. Now, since we're in Western culture, I think it's important to talk about Christianity because as we look at the numbers there are more Christians around the globe than anything, and especially here in the United States. But did you know there are over 43,000 different versions of Christianity? And that's growing every year. There's different versions of Christianity. Now, what amazes me is that these 43,000 different versions of Christianity are all reading the same book and coming up with their own interpretation of what that book says. And that is the intention of a religion, is to take a perception or a interpretation of that book and then create your own movement around it, if you will. So again, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do have my own experience, what's true for me. And so, men, I want to start with a few questions. I want to engage you guys in this question. And so, Paul, I want to start with you. And I just want to know, what are your earliest memories about God? What's the first thing that might come to mind when you were small? What did you hear? What did you see? What are your first memories about God?
That's a good question. That's very interesting. Because as I'm thinking about what's my first reflection, my first memory of God, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm doing my best to figure that out, and what's really coming to mind is my first memory of religion. About like going to church. As I think more about this, I think the first memory I can think of with what the concept of God is when one of the older gentlemen that used to take care of me when I was a kid, when he passed. I just remember like going to his church and seeing his body in the casket and realizing like that's not him. And I was 7, I was 7 and I recognized like that's not him. And then there was a lot of messaging around he's going to heaven with God. And so like with that in mind, my memory of God was more like, damn, it must be a cool place if Mr. Macy's going. That must be really cool. And thinking like, now I'm like reflecting back on it, thinking like, man, I hope I get there one day so I can see him again.
Wow.
And yeah, it's like, I guess like as I'm thinking more about it, I thought of God as more like, all right, when you've done your good deeds, you come and hang with me. Like thinking about it. Yeah, that's my first memory. Thank you for that question.
Wow.
Wow.
You good?
I'm complete.
All right, thanks. All right, Jermaine, what's your earliest memory?
Oh man, I wish mine was more like Paul's, man. So for me, bro, I grew up in a household where my mother's religion from when she came over from her native land was something called Jehovah's Witnesses,
Cool. Yeah.
right? And I'm sure a lot of the viewers might know what that is. And I was really, really young, so I didn't really understand it. But we would go every single week, and I want to say we went on a Saturday, not a Sunday, for some reason, right? And what I remember about understanding who God was, what God was, and what his role was in my life, it was to keep me in line, bro. Like, listen, God is everywhere. He's watching you. So when you're doing something you think nobody's watching, he's watching. And he's the one that's gonna, finish the sentence, punish me or take away my toys or, and my mother, and she passed when I was 18, so this is years and years ago, right? But I remember her really believing it, like really in her heart of hearts believed it. And she tried really hard to walk the walk and talk the talk. And I also at a young age remember it being difficult for her, to try to be this person that her congregation expected her to be and never being able to do that. And as a younger man, the messages I used to carry are we're all doomed. Like what the heck? There's no way we could do this because as beautiful a person as she was, if she can't do it, then man, damn it, I definitely can't do it. Right. And so it was always this idea leading into my young adulthood where I found myself trying to search for a way to save me. Right. Like, how do I do that, bro? Because right now I'm just doomed, bro. Because all of my thoughts that God are hearing it's just messed up. Everything I'm doing is freaking messed up. So I'm already doomed. So what can I do to repent or get baptized? Or I mean, I need to do something so that I could save me. And I remember feeling that way all the way clear through till I was probably about 14 or 15, and a crazy thing happened, bro, is that I just gave up. Like I can't do it, you know because every time I try to do something and then it's not the right thing, or I think something, I start back from the beginning. So there's no way to beat this thing, bro. It was like, this never ending, damnation, right? And that's a really religious word to me, right? And that's what it felt like, bro. It really did. And it wasn't until I was in my young adulthood when I started to be exposed to different theologies or different ideas or different possibilities that gave me this sense of, oh shit, well maybe I'm not, all the way live. Maybe I can, maybe there's a chance for a brother to get somewhere. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. We gonna have to figure this out. And so yeah, so that was the earliest thought, bro. And that early thought, I can go as far back as 4 and 5 years old, man. Bible study, talking about how at one point the animals of the forest and the people lived amongst each other, right? I remember lions and tigers and things like that would be like in your house and you could be playing with them like a pet. That was the idea that I got, at some point thousands of years ago. That's what it was like. And then of course something happened and we did something bad, and then the animals turned against us and the devil came, and a whole bunch of stuff happened. So yeah, bro, that's really deep. And just to clarify, bro, I've never articulated that before in my life. So thank you for that question, man. That's really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Yo, brother, and I just want to build on, like, add on to Jermaine's wisdom and experience, because yeah, Jermaine, you and I meant to have been meaning to have a conversation about this because after my experience, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness as well, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience because as you shared it, I recognized that religion soured my perception of God, because I had it as like, man, he's gonna be. It must be Mr. Macy's hanging out there. To like, damn, man, this woman did something bad, and now we're punishing her. Like, is that what God really is? Like, in Jehovah's Witness religion, people would get this fellowship, and we couldn't talk to them. And I remember as a young kid thinking that was the dumbest thing ever, because like, isn't God supposed to be loving? Like, and when you mentioned to me, like, God is coming down, like he's right looking over you. If you mess up, it's a wrap. Like, I remember feeling that, and when I was in my preteens, my dad was looking to find religion. So even though he read the Bible all the time, so when I would stay with him on Friday nights into Saturday, I would go to church with him on Saturday. But then, like, as Jehovah's Witness, we had our ministry school, we had our book study, like usually Tuesday or Wednesday. Then we had theocratic ministry school on Thursday night, and then we had church. So it was like I was churched out, man. But like, yeah, Jermaine, your experience resonates deep with me, man. And I recognize, like, I had to go find my own what God really meant for me at 18, because I never wanted to be a hypocrite. My mom went through some experiences in the congregation that like soured me on religion. But I remember telling her when I was 18, I was like, Mom, I can't be a hypocrite. I'm out here drinking. At that time, it was Old English. I'm down here drinking Old English, man, smoking joints and grabbing on these girls' booties, man. I was like, I can't be a hypocrite and go out and speak the word, and I'm doing all these things. So that's when it shifted, man. So thank you, Jermaine. Appreciate you, bro, for sharing, man.
Yeah, we're gonna go a little deeper in that in just a moment. But a couple of experiences that triggered my skepticism about God at a very, very early age. Number one, when I was about 10, I was forced to be baptized. Now, I was brought up Baptist in the Baptist religion. And if you've never been in a Baptist church and seen this baptismal thing, trust me, it's scary as hell. I remember, I'll never forget, everybody was telling me about the ministers were going to dump me in the water and then pull me out. And when I came out of the water, I would be saved, right? This baptism thing. But I remember at 10 years old, I was absolutely terrified, because I thought, number one, I was a sinner because of all the stuff I had heard. But I was afraid that the minister was going to drown me. And I couldn't get that thought out of my head. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person. He's going to dunk me. He's going to hold me, and I'm going to die. And I remember walking up the stage, walking up to the baptismal, and I was sweating. I mean, I was terrified. The guy dumps me in the water. He pulls me up. And as soon as I got up, I sighed of relief. Whew, at least I'm not dead. I remember that like it was yesterday, man. Terrified. So even in that moment, I was still just skeptical about God. But here's what really triggered my skepticism. My grandparents were very, very religious people. Okay. And they're the one that forced me to go to church. Now, they never went, but they forced me to go to church. And my grandmother, who was literally the grandmother from hell, right? Raging alcoholic. I mean, just violent abuse. You can't even imagine. And so she had you've seen the picture, the sculptures of Jesus nailed on the cross. You know, you've probably seen that. She had one of those hanging up in the living room. She had the picture of Jesus with the heart emanating from some light, talking about love. And she talked about Jesus all the time. But she was beating me and just abusing me in all sorts of ways. So in my little mind, I couldn't figure all that out. Well, one day, and it's as I'm thinking about this, it's sort of coming back. I remember I didn't know how to approach them about God and me, but I had an idea. I had a thought when I was about 10. And my grandfather and I were pretty tight. And so I went up to my grandfather and I asked him, I said, Grandpa, why is God so mad at Black people? And he goes, what do you mean? Well, this was in the 60s. And I saw all the riots and the spraying the holes and all of that during that period. And they were always talking about Jesus and God, and yet I wanted to know why God was so mad at black people, because why didn't he do something? I mean, that's my little 10-year-old brain, right? Trying to figure it all out. And I'll never forget, my grandfather said, and he used to call me Big Jaws because I had these big fat cheeks. He said, Big Jaws, we may not understand it, but God's plan is always perfect. And you just have to understand and accept that God's plan is perfect. And it may look like God is mad, but God isn't mad at black people. He just has a perfect plan for them. Now, at the time, that made absolutely no sense to me. I couldn't grasp that at 10 years old. And that's when I really stopped believing in God, actually. There's a part of me that just said, that just doesn't make sense. And so it was those two experiences, which at a very early age, I started questioning God. And those are my earliest memories about God. And so I want to move to the next question. And Jermaine, I'll start with you. Can you remember a time when you just made a decision that maybe there wasn't such a thing as God? Do you remember an experience where you just kind of went, nah, I ain't buying that? Did you ever have that experience?
So the quick answer is no, right? Because I always felt like there was something greater than me. I just didn't know how to describe it. Right? And so where my quest took me was more or less, okay, well, what's really true here? I grew up in a neighborhood where the Muslim religion was really big. So I hung out with the Muslims. Bro, what's good? Tell me about the Quran. What are they saying in there? Give me some passages I could read. You know what I mean? A lot of Christianity, Christian churches, even Catholicism. My stepsister is a Catholic, right? My wife's family, they come from Puerto Rico, so they're Catholic, right? And so it's like, yo, man, tell me something. What's good? What's your God doing? It's that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's good over there where y'all studying, right? And I remember the time that I realized that every answer I was getting was subjective to the person who was giving it to me. Like whatever their experience was, whatever their fear was, whatever their upbringing was what they held on to. And so it gave me the notion that maybe I need to do that for myself if everybody else is doing that, right? Because even in the same congregation, I could talk to 5 or 10 different people about who their God is and get different answers. But it's the same church, same congregation, same teaching.
Wow.
How is that possible? And so I realized, I'm like, damn. So what these people must be doing is holding on to what's working for them, right? And then the rest of it that's not working, just ignore that, right? And we see that with your example, white supremacists doing white supremacy things and using the same Bible that me and you are studying out of to justify it, right?
Yep.
So then as the wheels start turning, I started to get into, that's when the switch from religion to spirituality got introduced to me, is because I attended a Easter service at a church I had never heard of before because a friend invited me. And the name of the church was called Unity Christ, right? And I thought that was a little bit weird. Unity, what church calls themselves Unity? It was weird. And I'm going to tell you something. The very first time I went, I asked to speak to the pastor or the reverend or whoever he was one-on-one because I wanted to know from him what this was. I have my own interpretation, but what is this? And for the first time, somebody said something to me that made a lot of sense. Right? And when he said it to me, it's like I knew it all my life. I just never knew how to articulate it, right? Maybe somewhere in my life, it was it was given to me and I ignored it, or I heard it in passing. I don't know what it was. But when I sat with this man, he actually changed the way that I thought about religion as a whole, right? What spirituality was, and how I can marry being religious and being spiritual all at the same time if I chose to do that. And so it became my own personal journey.
Got it. Got it. So, Paul, was there a time when you had a aha moment that maybe there was no such thing as God?
You know, very similar to what Jermaine said, I've always had a belief that there was something higher, a higher power. When I questioned the existence of God, looking back on it, it was at extremely low times in my life. Like, when I had young friends as I was growing up, friends that had died in car accidents, and I would question, like, what's the reason God does these things? So even in spaces where I'm like, oh man, I thought that I was doing everything right, and I still would get smacked around in life. I question God's existence and purpose, but yeah, I mean, like, deep down, I never questioned the existence. I never questioned the existence. I knew, if anything, it was something different than the labels I had been conditioned to call it. Yet at the same time, I knew it was something bigger. Yeah.
Wow. Well, for me, there was an instant, and I'm going to share this story. As mentioned, I was brought up Baptist. And even as a Baptist, I had a million questions that nobody would answer. And whenever I'd ask a question, they would say, well, just pray about it. Well, that never answered the question. And so I go through adolescent, get to my teenage years. My mom used to make me go to church. If I had a job, that was the only way I could get out of going to church. So I made sure I had a job so I wouldn't have to go to church. And so after moving out on my own, I just kind of walked away from religion in general. And it wasn't until after my divorce that I was trying to figure out a way to alleviate the pain that I was in. And so I decided to go to church. I figured, well, that could help. And I go to a Baptist church because that's what I was familiar with. And so I go to this church. I do all the Baptist things, right? I confess with my mouth that Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I repent of my sins. I become born again Christian. The truth is, I was pretending. Truthfully, I really didn't believe that. But for me, it was a way of alleviating the pain that I was in because I'd gone through a divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure, the whole 9 yards. So I was just in a lot of pain trying to figure out how to stop it. And so I was there for probably 3 weeks. And a lot of questions that I had about God kept popping up. And there was one question in particular that really bugged me. It was like a splinter in my mind that I just needed to pull out. And so one Sunday, I go to my minister and I asked him, look, can we meet after church? Because I have something I have to ask you. And he said, sure. So we meet after church. And I said, Pastor, listen, I am really struggling with my faith right now. And I need to ask you a question. And your answer to the question is going to determine whether or not I stay with your church. And he said, okay. I said, all right, let's just imagine that there are two people born at the exact same moment. One is born in poverty, the other is born in wealth. Now, let's imagine that they go through life. The person born in poverty does all the bad things. Person born in wealth does all the good things. Now, let's just imagine that they both die at the exact same moment and they end up at the entrance to heaven. And there stands God with his book of life. So imagine God calls up the guy born in poverty. He flips through his book of life. kind of frowns and grimaces just a little, says, ooh, you did a lot of bad things. But I'm a loving, forgiving God. And there's really only one question you have to answer. Did you and do you accept my son, Jesus Christ, as your Lord and Savior? God looks up at God and says, God, I repent of my sins. I'm really sorry for what I've done. I accept your son, Jesus Christ, as my Lord and Savior. And God says, come on in. Next, he calls up the guy born in wealth, flips through his book of life. Big smile comes over his face. He says, wow, you did a lot of good things. But there's only one question you have to answer. Did you and do you accept my son, Jesus Christ, as your Lord and Savior? God looks up at God and says, ooh, we got a small problem. I honestly can't do that because, first of all, I've never even believed you existed. And so God looks at him and says, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. And if you'll just take the elevator down, you get to spend an eternity in hell. And so I looked at my minister and I asked him point blank. I said, look, is that how your God works? And he didn't even blink. Absolutely. That's what the Bible teaches. That's what I believe. I looked at him. I said, Pastor, no disrespect, but that is the most insane, idiotic, illogical, irrational thing I have ever heard in my life. How can you believe such a thing? He said, that's what the Bible teaches. That's what I believe. I said, well, here's the thing. I am willing to risk spending an eternity in hell because I don't believe a God would do such a thing. I said, that makes no sense to me. And he said, son, you just need to study your Bible. And I said, no, I don't. And I walked away from the church. And it was in that moment, I believed there was no such thing as God. And it was in that moment I became an atheist.
Coach. Oh, hey, Coach, a question, man. So you became an atheist, but was there a belief in something bigger?
No, not at all. Not
Okay.
in that moment, because number one, I'm a big science guy and I love to know and understand and get things to work up here. I had never had anyone help me answer some of the questions I had. So in here, I couldn't wrap my head around it. So for me, I was absolutely convinced there was nothing outside of me. Nothing that had anything to do with anything. I was convinced that science had the answer to everything. And all I needed to do was study that and I could answer all of my questions. And so it was that experience that led me to become an atheist. And I was an atheist for about 3.5 years, completely convinced there was no such thing as God. There's a guy, what is his name? Hawkins, I think. What's his name? There's a guy who wrote a book called The God Delusion. You guys ever hear that? It's called The God, and this guy's like the world's famous atheist. He goes around on these talk shows, man, talks about, there's no such thing as God. And he's a science guy. So he tries to refute everything with science or whatever. Well, I love the book. It just made sense to me. But again, that part of me, and actually the reason I was unable to connect with or identify, because I tried to do God from here. Because I couldn't understand it, I couldn't accept it. But what I have known because of my own spiritual journey now is that you can't get God up here. You got to get God in here, right? So that's kind of been the journey. So as you're watching this, I want you to just kind of think about what were some of the messages you received as a kid about God? And did you accept those ideas, those beliefs? And are you still holding on to those old beliefs without questioning them? So if you're watching this now and you're live, you can go into the chat. Paul, is the chat room open?
Yeah, it's open.
Okay, if we have any viewers, chat room's open. Drop your comments in there. Let me know, what were your first beliefs, experiences with God? Drop them in the chat. So I'm curious, men, because we're talking about today the difference between spirituality and religion, because I think there's a distinction to be made between the two. And there's a lot of people now that are identifying with spiritual but not religious. And if you look at the data says over the last 40 years or so, organized religion has been in a free fall. Less and less people are going to church. Less and less people are identifying with the religion. But at the same time, people that are seeking spiritual insights have been on an increase. And so some people will look at the decline in religion and say that, oh, that's because the world is going to hell in a handbasket because we need God in schools. And you got those people that are promoting that, and they see it as a negative thing. Me personally, I see it as a positive thing, because I think what people are hungry for and longing for is a connection to something bigger than themselves. And I believe you can have that without organized religion. Because for me, and again, Michael Taylor's definition of God is the divine intelligence that created and is still creating this amazing universe we live in. So that is my definition. That's how I view it. And so I'm curious now, Paul, how would you define God or higher source, or how do you perceive that something bigger than yourself? Or do you?
Like perceive, like wrapping my head around the question, like how do I perceive a higher being, a higher self?
Or how would you define God? How about that? How would you define God?
It's the all. I would say that's how I would define it. It's God is in everything. It's part of everything. It's in all things. And we as humans are expressions of God, like God's creativity. Yeah, I think as I'm thinking about this question, I'm recognizing that I've really used the word God. So I'm having challenges like really figuring out what that, like how I would define it. I'd say if I was to define the divine, like I would say it's an intelligence that lives in all things, that connects us all. But as far as God, yeah, I'd have to pass on that how I would define it. And really focused and saying more it's the divine. I'm really now acknowledging like I really use the term God. It's very interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
And again, I want to touch bases on that, because I know, especially when I was an atheist, the word God was a loaded word. And as soon as I heard the word, I checked out. I couldn't relate. And
Yes.
so I want to throw this out to the audience that may be watching this. And for the religious people, it'll throw them a curve. But we have to understand that the word God is just a 3-letter word that man created to try to comprehend the incomprehensible. Think about that for a moment.
Wait, say that again. Say that again.
The word God is just a 3-letter word that man created to try and comprehend the incomprehensible.
Okay. So yeah, so this has all become much more clear for me now. And thank you for that, because I think it's once I started really seeing religion as something that was man-made, um, I completely I repel the word God. Like not like it doesn't exist, but I just think it's like in the Bibles. Like I follow this guy Billy Carson, and he talked about the Emerald Tablets, and he said it wasn't God, it was gods. because in these Bible stories, like they worship different gods. Yet what we do in religion is we worship one. Yet as you mentioned, it's 4,300 religions out there. So like one of the reasons I reject the word, I mean, like, yeah, I'm like, man, am I saying this? Yes, I am. One of the reasons I reject the word God is because I think people put a bunch of bullshit behind it. Like, leave it to God. Like, leave it, do, like, hold up. So, like, you're not going to do anything? You're just going to let God handle it. You're just going to sit on your ass? Like, then that's not God. You know what I mean? Like, so when I hear the word, it just puts me in a space of defensiveness. Like, man, because whenever some people, like, especially growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, we have to know the Bible back and front. So I went through this phase of like when people come at me religious stuff and tell me about the scriptures, I'd be like, here you go. And then I hit them with the scripture, and then they'd be like, I'm like, listen, man, go study your arts, man. Go study the word. And then if you want to come back, here's my address, and we'll have a conversation. But right now, you're discrediting yourself. So get the hell off my front step. But yeah, like I just went on a little tirade there, but like, but yeah, like God to me means it's a word, like you said, it's a word.
Gotcha. All right, Jermaine, what you got?
So real quick, I just want to read what G-Man put in the chat, bro. So he said he grew up in the Baptist church, as well as you, Coach, and he got baptized at 9, and it wasn't scary for him. Moved away from the church a few years ago after college to a more independent evangelical type church. And then these days, I am, for the first time, not following any religious beliefs. Correction. I did that briefly in college, but not like this. I tend to agree with Coach on that.
Yeah.
Right.
Bless
And,
up.
and the reason why I wanted to do that, because first, I wanted to say the first time I saw somebody get baptized, bro, the very first thing I thought was, oh my God, I got to do that next.
Ooh.
I want that to be me.
Really?
Because what happened in my young mind, bro, is I said, dang, these guys are going. They're going, when it's all over, they getting to go. I want to do that. You know what I'm saying? So and it wasn't scary for me at all. As a matter of fact, it was more like, when can I do that? And in the congregation I was in, and I don't know if this was the same for Paul too. I was really young in that, but you had to be a certain age to get baptized, right? So I wasn't yet old enough to do it. And I remember, bro, telling my mother, please let me, we used to do these revivals or something, P. Do you remember, like, once a year we go to like this stadium and it was ice cream, and I remember this
Good
but
chicken sandwiches and stuff. Yeah.
Oh man, it was the
I
bomb.
remember.
People got baptized there. And I remember like, oh man, I can't wait until that's me. So thank you, G-Man, for putting that out there and really showing us the trajectory of how you kind of evolved over the years, because that kind of speaks about me too, is that I found myself trying to search a lot. You know what I mean? Like, what's really going on here? I want to bend everybody's ear, but I'm gonna tell you something, bro. And this, this is where I am today with it, and it's really profound for me, very personal, right? And I want to share it with you guys and the audience too. Is that I got a sister who's 4 years older than me. And when we were younger, I grew up in Queens in the 80s. This is crack epidemic, right? When she was about 15 or 16, she got hooked on crack cocaine, right? And she was hooked on that shit probably, I'm just guessing, but it had to be at least 7 or 8 years. Really, really badly, right? I got nephews who were born as crack babies, right? But here's the thing, bro, is that when she was ready to get clean, you know what did it for her? It wasn't the rehabs, it wasn't the people on the street trying to help her. It was the church in the neighborhood that took her in and taught her something that she grabbed onto so strongly, bro, that she beat the addiction, right? Now, for me, let me tell you why that's profound for me, right? I'm not a religious dude. right? I don't subscribe to anything that the masses are doing that doesn't come from my own brain. I'm wired this way, right? I'm one of these self-starter kind of guys, right? So I don't subscribe to it. A lot of it I don't even believe. A lot of it, my judgments around them are, it's just people trying to control people for the sake of money, for the sake of power, or whatever it is that they, that they're getting from it, right? And in my personal life, I've watched the church, bro. I've watched it take a human being, heal her, and make her well. Now, she's been off of drugs for probably 25 years. She's a nurse now. She's an advocate for drug abuse people. She does these big things in the parks in Queens where all of the advocates and all of these people who help people on drugs come out, and they do this big drive where they make money and they do giveaways and the kids get things and they donate to shelters and all. So the point I'm trying to make is that, and this is all my judgment. So I want everybody to forgive me for what I'm about to say, right? Is that each individual has a need in their own individual life, right? Some people are not self-starters like me, bro. Some people are not independent thinkers, right? And so my belief is that most people need that leader, that deity, that reverend, that pastor, whatever that might be, right, to help lead them in their life. And I'm so grateful for that, bro, that there are people who are willing to step up in that and be that person, because I know I can't be. Because had it not been for that, then my sister may not be here right now, right? And even though I don't agree with it, half the stuff I don't even believe, but what I know is the impact that it had on my sister and my family and the life that she's living right now, right? Now, if it wasn't for religion, could she have kicked that habit? I don't know. And I'm not willing to go back in time and rewind it, take that away and see what happens either, right? I'm not willing to do that. So I'm thankful for it, right? And just like everything else, institutional, there are problems with everything, right? So I get that not every pastor, not every reverend has good intention, right? There are some guys out there that are just pillaging, right? Let's keep it real. But for the most part, as long as there's one or two that's saving lives like that, then, bro, I don't have to understand it. I don't have to believe it. I don't have to even be a part of it, as long as that's what it's actually doing. So, I mean, bro, that's really me and where I sit, right, in a nutshell. And I hope that people can get that what I'm really trying to say is that for me, it may be one thing, right? For you, it may be something else. And I think the grace, bro, the love, the support piece is me giving you the space to know what that is and support you in being in that space if it's serving you, right? Yeah, I'm in with that, bro. Thank you. And we got a lot of comments that just popped in now.
Yeah, and so my take on it is simple. There are many paths to God. And just because I'm on a different path than you doesn't mean I'm the one who's lost. And so in reality, I believe, again, this is Michael Taylor's belief, that every religion originates from the same place or the same source and leads to the same place. It's my belief. Every religion, they all come from the same source and lead to the same place. And that source goes by many different names. Most people refer to it as God. Some people call it the universe. I call it divine intelligence. I call it source energy. But it's just, I know now that there is something in me that is divine. And when I connect to that something and I allow myself to express that something through me, in my own way, I become a neon sign for divine intelligence by my actions. So when I write a book, when I give a speech and people go, wow, that was awesome. I say, oh yeah, you think that was me? No. And that leads me to this point, which is you have to be spiritual to some degree to believe you have a divine purpose. I personally believe every human being has a divine purpose. I believe we showed up with it. It's encoded in our DNA, and it's our responsibility to figure out what the hell that is. But when we find it, and it comes from here, it is the fuel that will drive us to accomplish miracles. My own experience has taught me that by tuning in, tapping in, and turning on this divine energy, this divine intelligence in me, there is absolutely nothing I can't accomplish. Now, the metaphor that I use when I think about God and us is the metaphor of the ocean. So I want you to imagine an ocean. It's majestic, it's beautiful, it's powerful, okay? So imagine you walk up to this ocean and you got a jar. You scoop up a jar of ocean, okay? Now, that jar of ocean has all the same characteristics, attributes of the ocean. It is literally the ocean, right? It's no different than the ocean. But can that jar of ocean be the ocean in its totality? No, but it's not different, right? So a human being is just a jar of ocean. God, as I understand it, the universe is the ocean, and we're divine expressions of that ocean. We are literally expressions. I think Paul kind of alluded to this. We are literally expressions of the ocean. And so it is our responsibility to figure out how we can express the divine expression of the ocean we were born to be. And again, it's an individual journey that we all have to go on. And you have to connect to that part of yourself, which I choose to call divine intelligence. For example, for me, and I believe every human being has unique gifts and talents. We all show up with unique gifts and talents. We got to find out what that is. So for me, I never dreamed of being a writer. Didn't know I could write. I didn't start writing until I was in my late 30s, right? But what I now know is that I am so connected to this intelligence that I'm talking about that I can do what I call downloading. For example, when I'm writing a book, I've written a book a year for the last 9 years. And the question becomes, where does that book come from? Now, some people may say, Mike, you're just a really smart guy. No, I'm not that arrogant to believe I'm just that smart. No, I can connect, or I am connected to that energy, that source energy, that when I'm writing, I'm just taking dictation. And that divine energy is just flowing through me. And that's creativity. And we all have access to that. But we have to develop an intimacy and connection to that which is greater than ourselves to experience that. So, men, I'm curious, in your own experience, do you have a sense of purpose, that there is something that you were put here to do, and are you doing it? Jermaine, what you got?
So before we do that, Coach, because me and P been reading these comments on that.
Yeah, seriously,
they killing
bro.
it right now. Yeah, P, if you could put them up on the screen, that'd be crazy, bro. So G-Man said all religions do not lead to the same place, bro. He disagrees with Coach.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bro.
So hold on. Before we even get into that, could it be when Christians say just pray or just read the Bible, maybe it's a cop-out. Maybe they just never knew what they believed and could not clearly teach what they know, right? Is that a possibility?
Yep. I say, yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%, Andrew. I'm with you on that one.
Is the chronic human condition to ask tough questions, not have the patience to wait and listen for the answers? Is that a chronic human condition?
Chronic.
Yes.
Boy threw chronic in there.
Yes. Yes. So think about it, right? Like, I want to just comment on this because this is what I see as the difference between spiritual and religious, right? It's like almost like religion has you going to seek God, and the spirit is like if you sit and be silent. Like what I think it was Psalm 83, 13. Be still and know that I am God. Like when a person from a spiritual sense can be still, can be present with themselves, they hear the instinct. They hear, like you coach, your question, are you here divinely led by something? Yes. Okay, because I'm able to sit and be silent and hear it. And I agree with Andrew. Like most of the time, like we're taught, like we either gotta sit and wait for God, right, and wait until like not even be present with the insights, or we have to go seek and do and be in service and all these things. And it's almost like we're in so much action that we fail to hear God or divine or whatever that is, man. Great comments, man. Great comments.
Yeah, and for G-Man, again, appreciate your perspective. And here's my perspective on why I say they all lead to the same place. It is my belief that there is a divine intelligence. Okay, it is what some people might call pure consciousness. Okay, ultimately, when we connect to infinite intelligence, it always brings us back to that divine intelligence, the source of all things. I believe all religions are just revelations from that intelligence to help us understand how to get back to oneness with that which is everything. So that is just Michael Taylor's interpretation of and why I say all religions actually lead to the same place. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah. So he's asking, does Satanism lead to the same place, right? Like
Bro, I
that's
was just looking at that
religion.
question. Woo, child.
Yeah, right. So when we talking about the opposite of what we know as God, right? And I guess we'd have to define what that is. What is Satanism? Who is Satan?
Well, and do you have a belief in such a thing? So for me personally, I believe there's but one presence and one power in the universe. Okay, there's one presence, one power in the universe. I don't believe that there is a negative force, a negative energy, a Satan, a devil, whatever you want to call it. I don't personally believe that that's real.
So I want to jump in on this because listen, G-Man, I highly suggest you read this book by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. Okay? It is hands down, like for anyone that was religious, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, this book is so tip top because how I perceived how Napoleon Hill broke this out is that God or the divine is a person on purpose. Okay? A person led by something higher. The devil is distraction and the drift, which can come in many forms. It can come in a girl or some voluptuous woman and barely anything on. It can come in a brownie a la mode. It can come in education. It can come in religion. It can come in a lot of ways. So that statement is, man, and coach, I hear what you're saying. I just think like there's like, especially coming into more the hermetic principles, there are energies, frequencies that are lower or higher. Which do we align to, man? That's important. That's a great comment.
And I like that, P. And thank you. G-Man is hitting it today. And here's the thing for me, bro, is that when I don't want to take personal responsibility for me, right? When I need something other than me to blame, right? This comes in real handy, bro. Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times the devil made me do it, that kind of thing, right? And so what it really boils down to for me is, like I said earlier, right? I'm a self-starter, right? I'm a free thinker. Not a lot of people, bro. Most people need to have that thing that they can blame it on, put it on, give it to, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm just going to pray about this, right? That's a way to abdicate, bro. That's a way to give that. So then this way, I don't have to feel like the failure, right? Or I don't have to feel like the one that doesn't know, the one that can't do it, the one that's the low man on the totem pole, because I prayed. And if it's for me, it'll come. If it's not, it's not. It's a way for me to be okay with me, bro. This is where the men's work movement, this is where facilitation comes in. Because really, when it boils down to it, bro, and this is what I ask men who come to me broken, right? What would it look like right now? Close your eyes and take a deep breath. For you to take full responsibility for every experience you have in your life, regardless of your belief about who gave it to you or who didn't give it to you. What would that look like for you? And bro, I'm gonna tell you, for the small percentage of people that get that, right? That the day that I can take full responsibility for every experience that I have, the power just starts flooding back in my own body, bro. And I start to realize that, and in many ways, bro, religion and spirituality support this next statement, right? And I don't want to quote it because I don't know it like that, but it's something around faith without works
It's
It's
dead.
dead.
something, right? Like,
Amen.
I can believe, right? But if I don't do something about it, if I don't make my to-do list, if I don't fill out my calendar, it's not going to happen, bro. And as a matter of fact, coach, in the Unity Church, they got a story that they tell about the man in the boat, and he was asking God for somebody to come get him.
Yeah.
You remember that story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing, bro. It's about having self-awareness, recognizing the blessings in front of me, taking advantage of the support systems and the connections and the abundance, right? We talked about that. And what did we talk about just yesterday, right? Taking advantage of all of those things and creating the reality I want to live. That's what it's really about, bro. And when I'm unable to do that, then things like just pray on it, read your Bible, see what comes up. The devil made me do it. Those things come in really handy for me when I'm in that space, right?
Yeah. When you want to play victim. Now, here's a simple way to look at it. If you want to know what God you believe in, simply take a look at your life right now. If your life is filled with abundance and joy and inner peace, chances are your source, your God, is the source of that. But if your life is filled with lack, negativity, pessimism, then you're tuned into what some people might call a lower frequency, and you're simply receiving what you're putting out there. And so if you can align with the law of attraction, which is pretty basic, like attracts like. If your heart is centered around love and compassion and forgiveness, I can assure you that the feeling that you have will be what I'll choose to call positive. But on the other hand, if your heart is filled with negativity and hurt and resentment and anger, what that does is creates more of the same. So for me, again, my source energy, as I understand it, the way to know if I'm connected to it is how I feel. When I feel in alignment, I feel good. When I'm out of alignment, I don't feel so good. So for me, again, it's about each individual finding their own truth. What's true for you? Because your truth is going to be different than my truth. And what I'm sharing is simply my truth. I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm saying it's my truth. And if it aligns with your truth, fantastic. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Just stay with your truth and connect to your truth and look at your results, and it'll tell you what your truth is bringing up for you. So as we're winding down, Paul. So
I want to hop in on one thing real quick, right? Because I think what you said is really important, and it also aligns to men's work and what we do in the BKC and in the organizations that we support and participate in. The majority of men, in my judgment, in the work I've been doing, have yet to even know what alignment feels like. They have no idea. They have yet to have that space to explore, like, wow, what does it feel like to be connected to God? Because there's so many conditions in my judgment around religion, what God is, and there's so much trauma and beliefs around what God is, to the point that, speaking of myself, for example, there was a point where I didn't even want to talk to anybody religious because I was like, you're all full of doo-doo and caca. So I was like, I don't want to hear anything you have to say because you're a liar, right? So there's still men or people in general out there that have completely blocked off any potential path to something to divine until they have a space to be able to peel the layers back on those hurts, on those pains, on those beliefs, on those conditions, to now all of a sudden they get to touch something sacred, which could be termed as God, the divine, whatever, like woo-woo feelings, whatever it calls, but yet that's that feeling, that sensation of truly being aligned to something higher, something grander. So I just want to put that out there because as men watch this, please, like, I want to make sure we're also aware, like, when men come to us, they have yet to know a lot of these definitions, a lot of what these feelings are. This is why we create that space, because there could be something powerful within you. Like, I forget how, there's genius within you. Les Brown would say something like, there's success in you, there's love in you, there's all these things. And speaking from my own perspective, until I have the space to even explore my hurts and my pains, like, it was very difficult for me to even align to God or what that divine is, because I'm like, man, I'm just figuring out how to get food on my table and pay child support, right? Until I was able to settle in, like, I'm creating this environment, all is mine. Oh man, I gotta have patience and forgiveness with myself. Kindness, which is what? All qualities of what? Right? All qualities of what? Religion, God, all that stuff. We got to see it in ourselves. We got to give ourselves that gift that we would say God would give to us. We got to be able to let that in and give it to ourselves. So I just wanted to put that out there before we start wrapping, man.
Yeah, and again, in summary, what we're about here at BKC is providing insights and wisdom. We're not saying we have all the answers. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm saying this is my way. And maybe, just maybe, if my way aligns with you and your belief system, you might want to go that way. But that's your choice. That's the beauty of what this work is about. It's all about choice. Our greatest gift, I believe, as human beings is the power to choose. We get to choose our mindsets about everything. So I wanted to real quickly share some distinctions that I came up with in when I'm making the distinction between being spiritual versus being religious. And this won't take but a second. So for me, spirituality is love-based. Religion can be fear-based. I know for a long time I was terrified of Jesus. I was terrified of God because I thought I was such a sinner. I was such a bad person. That was ingrained in me. So religion can be fear-based in a lot of cases. Another thing, spirituality is all-inclusive. Religion is exclusive. For example, if you don't follow what their religion says is the right way, you can't be a part of their group. So they're exclusionary. Okay, that's religion. For me, spirituality feels freeing. When I was a part of religion, it felt constricting, it felt controlling, and it just didn't feel good. And last but not least, spirituality is open-minded, whereas religion is closed-minded. Religion will teach you that this is the way. And if you don't follow this way, then you can't be a part of our group. So that's kind of the distinctions I make between spirituality and religion. And again, I believe you can have spirituality without religion. So it's really about connecting to source. That's how I see it. So as we wind down, gentlemen, first of all, for the viewers, thank you for tuning in. I am so glad we've had this conversation. And once again, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but for those of you who have commented, I hope that you've gained some insights, because it's really about changing how you think or making you think. That's the whole intention. So, Paul, I want to give you an opportunity to check out. Final thoughts, or the checkout will be any final thoughts that you have.
Yeah, I'm still thinking of that scripture, be still and know that I am God. People talk about prayer, and I think it's important, and I'm inviting people that watch this to take moments of stillness to listen. Take moments of stillness to hear the inner voice within you. Be able to hear it rather than hear it, and then also take the time to bless. Take the time to truly bless yourself, bless your food, and be in curiosity. Start to find what works and what aligns for you. And I'm out.
Jermaine.
Man, bro. Yeah, so are we in alignment with God's divine assignment for our lives? This is what Andrew said. You got to hear that, right? And he put that there deliberately. You got to hear that. And so my final thoughts are, Coach, when you talked about the jar of ocean, it reminded me of the God in me, right? What part of me has that part that maybe Jesus had, that maybe Moses had, that maybe Muhammad had, these people in the Bible? And how can I use some of the stories that are in these books to better my life, right? Not to follow a doctrine, or a specific way of belief, but really to have my own set of choices. And I love how you line that up, right? So that I could say, and we do this in the work, in men's work, does this really fit for me? And if my answer is yes, it is serving my life in the way that I intend it to be, then let's exaggerate that. Let's multiply that. But if my answer is no, the beautiful part about it is I can make a different choice at any time. And so that's what I'm leaving with, bro, is that I have choices, right? And there are many different modalities that I can use to inform those choices. It's just up to me. And I'm out, bro.
Yeah, the power to choose, man. One of our greatest gifts. So I want to kind of touch bases on something Paul said, which I think is extremely important. As a former atheist, it was impossible for me to connect to God because I was so emotionally disconnected from myself. It wasn't until I did my inner healing work that allowed me to get in touch with how I felt, what was true for me in my heart, not my head, that I was able to find my truth about God. And so I'm going to close with a comment from Rumi. And Rumi says, I searched for myself and found only God. I searched for God and found only myself. That's a wrap. This has been another conversation, the BKC live stream conversation. We appreciate you, and be sure to log on to the website and stay connected. We appreciate you being here. Take care.
Bless up, everybody. See you next week.